A quiet welcome to PlotFall. Let's journey together into the often overlooked details surrounding why you wouldn't survive a single day as a Roman gladiator. Before we begin, if you find value in these stories, perhaps take a quiet moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps others find the channel. You can also let me know in the comments where you're listening from and the time. It's always fascinating to see our quiet community grow around the world. Now, find a comfortable position, perhaps dim the lights or turn on a soft fan for background noise, and let's ease into tonight's story together. So picture this. You're not gently stirring in your soft, familiar sheets, lulled by the distant hum of modern life. Instead, a coarse, damp chill is the first thing to greet you, seeping through the thin fabric of whatever rough tunic you've been given. Your bed? It's more like a thin straw pallet, laid out on the cold, unyielding stone floor of a crowded cell, a space you share with shadows and other weary souls. The air is heavy, thick with the intermingled smells of stale sweat, unwashed bodies, the faint, unsettling aroma of old blood, and something vaguely metallic, a scent that clings to everything in this place, the ludus, your new, unwelcome home. A guttural shout, not the gentle chime of an alarm clock, is your jarring wake-up call. Sunlight, if you can even call it that, struggles to pierce the gloom through a single, small, barred window, painting dusty, indifferent shafts in the dim light. There's a constant low murmur of restless sleepers turning, coughing, the clank of a distant chain. This isn't some elaborate historical reenactment you've signed up for, a thrilling weekend escape. This is it. Your first morning as a gladiator, a word that once sounded thrilling, perhaps even heroic in stories, but now feels like a lead weight pressing down on your chest. You're surrounded by hard, impassive faces, bodies etched with scars and toughened by a life you can't yet comprehend. Forget your morning coffee, your leisurely breakfast, or the simple act of scrolling through your phone. The day ahead promises only grueling, relentless training, basic, unappetizing rations, and the constant, gnawing fear of the arena. A truly delightful start to a life you never asked for. Wouldn't you agree? That lead weighting your chest, it's not just the fear of the training. It's the chilling realization that everything you once were has been stripped away, like an ill-fitting toga tossed onto a pyre. Perhaps you were a proud soldier, captured on a distant battlefield, the echoes of your legion's trumpets now a fading, painful memory. Or maybe a craftsman, your hands once skilled in shaping wood or metal, now calloused for a different, brutal purpose. It could even be the debt, a desperate gamble led you here, selling your own body, your own life, for a handful of coins that now seem utterly worthless. Whatever your story, it's over. Your name, the one your mother whispered, is gone, replaced perhaps by a harsh new moniker, spat out by a *lanista with eyes like flint. The clothes on your back, coarse and unfamiliar, are a constant reminder. Look around. The stone walls of the ludus, the gladiator school, are your new horizon, cold, unyielding, and indifferent to your silent pleas. The air itself seems heavy, thick with a scent of sweat, old straw, and a faint metallic tang you try not to identify. Listen. Beyond the gruff commands of your trainers, the rhythmic thud of practice swords against wooden ruptopali, can you hear it? A distant murmur, a hum that might one day swell into a roar. The crowd, they don't know your name, your history, your heartbreak. To them, you will be a spectacle, a fleeting moment of bloody entertainment. This is the terrifying unknown stretching before you. A life measured not in years, but in successful fights, each one a gamble against oblivion. The freedom you once took for granted, as simple as the air you breathed, is now a ghost, a phantom limb aching with its absence. But before you even glimpse the famed training yard, before the metallic tang of blood and the stale scent of sweat truly become your daily companions, there is the journey. Try to picture it if you can bear it. You are no longer a free person, but a piece of property, herded towards this new, grim chapter of your existence. Heavy iron manacles, their chills seeping into your bones, bite relentlessly into your wrists and ankles. Each step is a small, agonizing torment, the rusted metal rubbing your skin raw, a constant, grinding reminder of everything you've lost. You become part of a shuffling, miserable column, prodded along sun-scorched, unforgiving roads by guards whose faces are masks of indifference or casual cruelty. They see you as less than human, mere chattel to be delivered. The relentless sun beats down, baking the dust into your lungs, or perhaps it's a bone-chilling rain that soaks your thin, coarse tunic, clinging uncomfortably to your shivering skin. There's no shelter offered, no gentle hand, only the rough shove or the crack of a whip nearby, a sound that makes your heart hammer. The air itself feels oppressive, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, the sour tang of fear, and the ever-present dust kicked up by countless unwilling feet. Thirst becomes a maddening, constant companion, your tongue thick and dry, your throat aching for a single cool drop. Food, when it eventually comes, is a meager, unappetizing slop, barely enough to keep you moving. This journey alone, lasting for days, perhaps even weeks, under that vast, uncaring sky, is designed to break you, to systematically strip away any lingering defiance, any spark of your former self, long before your brutal education even begins. Many wouldn't even make it this far, their bodies, unaccustomed to such prolonged agony, succumbing to exposure, festering wounds, disease, or the quiet surrender of sheer despair. The imposing gates of the Ludus Asterisk will eventually loom, not as a destination reached, but as a threshold into a deeper darkness. The imposing gates of the Ludus finally creak open, not with any sense of ceremony, but with the dull thud of a cage door closing behind you. Forget any fleeting romanticized image of a school for heroes. This is your new reality, and the air that greets you is a testament to it. It's a heavy blanket woven from the stale sweat of countless bodies, the sharp, acidic scent of fear that seems to seep from the very walls, and an unsettling coppery tang, old blood, dried into the packed earth and wooden posts. It's a smell that will soon become as familiar to you as your own breath, clinging to your rough-spun tunic and your skin. Inside, there are no grand halls, no gleaming displays of weaponry meant to inspire. Instead, your eyes meet a sprawling, dusty yard, perhaps some crude, functional barracks on one side, an open-air training area on the other. The sounds that fill this space are relentless, a grim symphony of effort and despair, the rhythmic thud of wooden swords against practiced shields, the strained grunts of men pushed beyond their limits, the occasional sharp crack of a trainer's rod, and the low, guttural shouts of the Lannister's overseers. This isn't a training ground designed for nurturing skill. It's a factory, and you are now its raw, unwilling material. The other men you see, some new and openly terrified like yourself, others bearing the deep scars and hollowed eyes of veterans, move with either a grim, desperate purpose or a broken, shuffling weariness. Their faces are often unreadable, hardened masks or maps of past agonies and future dread. This Ludus is a prison, pure and simple, designed to strip away your name, your past, and forge you through pain and privation into something else entirely, a weapon, a spectacle for the baying crowds. And the only way out, you will quickly come to understand, is either through the blood-soaked sands of the arena, or, for most, the quiet anonymity of the grave. And then, inevitably you meet him, the Cleolanista. He might not be a hulking brute. Perhaps he's even a little soft around the edges now. His own fighting days, if they ever truly existed, softened by years of counting coin. He could be draped in fabric a little too fine for the grime of the Ludus, a stark, uncomfortable contrast against the rough-hewn stone and packed earth. But his eyes are where his power truly resides. They are cold, perhaps the gray of a winter sky before a storm, and they don't see asterisk you. Not the trembling individual you are, not the life you've lost. Instead, they scan your frame, your musculature, the way you hold yourself, assessing, always assessing. You are a commodity, a sum on a ledger, a piece of expensive, perishable fighting flesh he's invested in, and his gaze is purely a calculation of potential profit or ruinous loss. His voice, when it finally comes, might be surprisingly quiet, almost a low rumble, yet it carries the unshakable weight of absolute authority. Each word, spoken perhaps without inflection, without wasted energy, lands with the finality of a hammer blow on stone. There are no negotiations here, no heartfelt pleas to be heard, no room for the person you once were, or the dignity you try to cling to. His pronouncements are not just law. They are the very atmosphere within these oppressive walls, the harsh, unyielding reality you must now accept to survive even this moment. To disobey, to even hesitate visibly in his presence, invites consequences that your mind, still clinging to remnants of freedom and fairness, can barely begin to fathom. Pain, you will quickly learn, is not merely a deterrent here. It's a meticulously applied teaching tool, a brutal language everyone in the asterisk ludus understands implicitly. He owns you, body and, he fervently hopes, spirit, and the chilling truth settles deep in your bones, a cold weight in the pit of your stomach. That cold weight in your stomach is just the beginning, a grim companion as you are led away, perhaps with a rough shove, from the Lanista's daunting presence. The air grows heavier still, or perhaps just colder, as you shuffle down a short flight of rough-hewn stone steps. The faint, metallic tang of old fear and damp earth might brush your nostrils, the echo of your reluctant footsteps swallowed by the thick silence of these lower chambers. Your new room awaits. Forget any notion of a private space, a moment to gather your thoughts in peace. Instead, try to picture a cramped stone box, perhaps no larger than a generous, shadowy cupboard by any standards you once knew. The walls weep with a persistent dampness, slick and cold to the touch, and the air hangs heavy with the cloying aroma of stale sweat, unwashed bodies, and something vaguely sour, a testament, no doubt, to the shared bucket in a dark, unseen corner. You are not alone, of course. Several other figures occupy this space, their faces indistinct in the gloom, their bodies hardened and scarred, their eyes watching you with an unnerving, assessing stillness. Comfort? That's a word that has utterly evaporated from this dim, fetid reality. Perhaps a thin scattering of rough straw lies on the unforgiving stone floor, promising little respite for already aching bones. Sleep, when it eventually comes, will be a fitful, wary thing, punctuated by the snores, coughs, and quiet, desperate murmurs of strangers who are, at best, indifferent to your arrival. The initial shock is almost a physical blow, the sheer, unyielding lack of anything soft, anything clean, anything remotely personal. This is not merely a place of confinement. It's a deliberate, soul-crushing stripping away of dignity, a constant, grinding reminder of your new, brutal existence, just hours into your new life. The thin solace of that troubled sleep shatters. It's not the gentle light of dawn that rouses you, but an assault of sound, a raw, unyielding cacophony that defines your new reality within the ludus. First, perhaps, your ears pick out the rhythmic, percussive thud of wooden swords, the asterisk rudes, striking shields, a sound that seems to drum directly into your skull. Then, cutting through this relentless beat, the sharp alien cadence of shouted commands, words you don't recognize, barked in what might be Latin, or perhaps the harsh tongue of a Thracian drillmaster, each syllable a hammer blow against your weary mind. And woven through it all, like a dark thread, are the more intimate sounds of human struggle, the sharp hiss of breath forced from straining lungs, the dull thud of body-meeting practice dummy, and the low, guttural groans of those who've taken a blow too hard, or twisted an ankle on the uneven, unforgiving ground. Occasionally, a sharper cry, quickly suppressed, a stark reminder of the brutal discipline. There's no gentle easing into this day, only the immediate immersion in relentless toil, the very dust motes dancing in the slivers of light that pierce the gloom seem to vibrate with the ceaseless activity. Peace is a forgotten luxury, a distant memory from another life, a word that has no meaning here. The air itself thrums with a nervous energy, a constant, metallic hum of impending violence. Every clang, every shout, every pained exhalation is a stark pronouncement. This is your world now, a constant, grinding reminder of your precarious existence, the soundtrack to a life balanced on the edge of a blade. And as you begin to adjust, ever so slightly, to this constant thrum, your attention inevitably turns to the other souls trapped here alongside you. These are not comrades in arms, not fellow students in any sense you might understand from a gentler world. Look closely at their faces, etched with lines of hardship, some young, some old, but all bearing the same haunted, wary expression. You see the flicker of old scars, pale against sun-darkened skin, silent testimonies to past battles, perhaps not even in the arena. These are men who have, in many cases, already killed, or have stared death in the face so many times it's become a familiar shadow. The air around them is thick with unspoken histories, with a desperate will to survive that has burned away any softness. You might offer a tentative nod, a flicker of acknowledgement, but true connection. That's a dangerous dream here. Trust is a currency more valuable than gold, and far, far rarer. A phantom, whispered about but never truly held. Instead, you'll find the common language is one of silent assessment, of brute strength, of quickly established hierarchies. A lingering gaze, a deliberately heavy footstep, the way one man claims a slightly better piece of training equipment. These are the conversations. Every interaction is a subtle test, a measurement of your potential threat or your potential weakness. The only bond here is the shared stench of fear and stale sweat, and the grim knowledge that tomorrow, one of them might be the reason your own story ends. They are mirrors reflecting your own desperate plight, and a constant chilling reminder of the odds. The hushed, wary sizing up from your fellow unfortunates soon gives way to a more formal and far more chilling appraisal. You're ushered, or perhaps shoved, into a space that feels colder still. A stark chamber where the air hangs heavy with the scent of old sweat, something vaguely medicinal, and the faint, metallic tang of distant iron. The light is poor, casting long, dancing shadows that make the figures before you seem even more imposing. This is where your perceived value will be meticulously and unsentimentally calculated. Stripped bare, you stand exposed, the cool air raising gooseflesh on your skin. Before you are the doctor, perhaps a Greek with surprisingly gentle hands but eyes that miss nothing. And the doctors, the trainers, their own bodies a testament to the brutal life they enforce. Their faces are weathered, etched with old scars and a profound weariness, or perhaps a grim amusement at the latest batch of raw material delivered to their doorstep. There's no comfort to be found in their expressions, only a pragmatic, almost bored scrutiny. Their eyes, hard and unreadable, trace the lines of your body, lingering on areas of softness, noting the absence of calluses that speak of a life unaccustomed to hard labor. Calloused fingers, surprisingly strong despite their age, prod at your muscles, your joints, testing for weakness or hidden injury. They pull back your lips to inspect your teeth, much like one would a horse, assessing your general health and, perhaps, your ability to endure a meager diet. Each touch is impersonal, a measurement rather than a connection. Your skin, unblemished by the scars of past skirmishes or the deep tan of relentless toil under a Mediterranean sun, seems almost an affront, a pale canvas of inexperience. A faint sneer might play on the lips of a younger doctor, or a weary sigh escape the older medic. This isn't the physique of a seasoned warrior, or even promising raw material. It's a project, and by the almost imperceptible shake of the head, one they suspect might not be worth the grain it will consume. Any hope of projecting an inner strength, of somehow convincing them of your hidden potential, dissolves under this dispassionate, purely physical inventory. You are, in this moment, reduced to flesh and bone, and found wanting. The silent verdict hangs in the air, as thick and suffocating as the fear that has become your unwelcome shadow. A clear indication that your journey through the ludus has hit its first and perhaps most insurmountable obstacle. The silent judgment passed upon you still hangs heavy, a precursor to the physical dismantling that is about to commence. Before you even touch a real weapon meant for the arena, before you learn the grim ballet of combat, there is the warm-up. And this, you quickly realize, is a cruel misnomer. What passes for a basic drill here would feel like an Olympic trial to your unconditioned body. A relentless, grinding initiation. The sun, perhaps, is just beginning to bleed color into the sky. Or maybe it's the thick, humid air of midday pressing down. It matters little. The training yard is already alive with the thuds and grunts of others, a grim symphony of effort. You're thrust into exercises that seem designed not to strengthen, but to expose every single weakness. Hours of repetitive motions, lifting weighted objects that feel like anchors, contorting your body in ways that strain every sinew. The burn in your muscles is a constant, unwelcome companion, a fire that spreads from your shoulders down to your trembling calves. Each swing of a heavy wooden rudis, each awkward lunge, is scrutinized. There's no gentle encouragement here, only the impassive, assessing gaze of the doctors, the trainers, noting your fumbling attempts, your flagging energy. This isn't about gentle improvement, it's a crucible designed to see if you will shatter. The air is thick with the scent of old sweat, damp earth, and a faint metallic tang you can't quite place. It's the smell of breaking down, of being reduced to your most basic, aching components, all before the true lessons in lethality even begin. They are searching for the merest flicker of resilience amidst the overwhelming fatigue. That flicker of resilience they seek? It feels a universe away. As the hours, or perhaps mere minutes, time has lost its sharp edges. Drag on, a new kind of understanding dawns, one written in the language of pure, unadulterated physical misery. Your body, a vessel so carefully curated by modern comforts, by gentle jogs and the occasional spin class, begins to betray you in spectacular fashion. Every sinew, every muscle fiber you didn't even know you possessed, now screams a chorus of protest. A dull, throbbing agony that promises only to intensify. Imagine the burn, not the satisfying warmth of a good workout, but a deep, grinding ache that settles into your shoulders, your thighs, your forearms, as you awkwardly heft the rudis, the wooden practice sword. It feels heavier than lead. Your hands, perhaps soft from keyboards and the gentle curve of a steering wheel, are already a geography of angry red welts. The skin screaming where the rough wood has rubbed it raw. The beginnings of blisters promise future agony with every clumsy grip. A sharp twinge in your lower back, a sudden surprising weakness in your ankle. These aren't just minor complaints. They are vulnerabilities noted, weaknesses that could mean the difference between a continued wretched existence and a swift, brutal end. The sheer, bone-deep exhaustion is a heavy cloak, smothering any flicker of that fighting spirit you might have imagined possessing. It's a leaden weight in your limbs, a thick fog clouding your brain, making even the simplest instruction from the Solinista feel like a complex riddle. Your breath comes in ragged, shallow gasps, tasting of dust, stale sweat, and your own quiet despair. This isn't the heroic struggle you've seen in films. This is the slow, agonizing grind of a body pushed far beyond its pampered limits, a body simply not built for this relentless world. And this, you realize with a cold knot forming in your stomach, is only the beginning of the training. The Lanista, finally, mercifully, dismisses you. Your limbs tremble with a weariness so profound, it's almost a physical weight. Every muscle fiber hums with exhaustion, and a desperate craving for sustenance gnaws at your insides. You might imagine, in your depleted state, some reward, perhaps a scrap of roasted meat or a piece of rough sustaining bread, but what's presented to you is a stark lesson in gladiator reality. A rough wooden bowl is thrust into your hands, its contents a dense, grayish-brown porridge, steaming faintly. The aroma is earthy, overwhelmingly of boiled grains, perhaps a hint of beans, but utterly devoid of spice or savor. This, you quickly learn, is the cornerstone of your new diet. Forget balanced meals or culinary delight. You are now a Asterix Cordarius, a, quote, barley eater, a title that carries none of the prestige you might have once fantasized about. You scoop the thick, glutinous mush, mostly barley, sometimes with beans or lentils mixed in, and it slides down your throat with a heavy, slightly gritty reluctance. There's no joy in this, no comfort. It's purely functional, cheap, carbohydrate-heavy fuel, designed to keep you on your feet and ironically, to build a layer of subcutaneous fat that might offer a sliver more protection in the arena. Your stomach, however, accustomed to perhaps a little more kindness, churns uneasily at this unfamiliar, monotonous fare. It sits like a stone, a dull ache accompanying the chorus of your other pains, a constant, bland reminder of your new, grim existence. This isn't food to be enjoyed. It's merely the stuff of survival, and barely that. Each mouthful is a testament to the brutal efficiency of the ludus, a system that views you as little more than an investment to be cheaply maintained until the day of the games. That heavy, joyless meal settles in your stomach, a dense lump of fuel, nothing more. And soon, inevitably, another craving joins the chorus of your body's complaints, a desperate, raw-edged thirst. Your tongue feels thick, your throat like sun-baked clay, caked with the dust that hangs perpetually in the air of the ludus. You imagine cool, clear water, perhaps from a shaded spring, but such comforts are phantoms here, luxuries lost to a former life. The water you'll get is as unceremonious as the food. Forget chilled, filtered streams. You'll likely trudge towards a communal well, a dark, damp circle in the beaten earth of the courtyard. The air around it might be heavy with the scent of wet stone and something vaguely organic. Listen closely, and you might hear the groan of old wood, the rhythmic splash and scrape as a tired-looking slave or a fellow trainee hauls up a bucket. This isn't a picturesque wishing well. It's a purely functional hole in the ground, serving many, pleasing none. When it's your turn, the water sloshed into your cupped hands, or a rough clay cup, is tepid, almost body temperature. It carries the faint mineral tang of the earth, perhaps a hint of algae, or the subtle residue of 1,000 other desperate gulps. There's no refreshment here, no satisfying quench, just the dampening of an immediate, pressing need. It's enough to keep you alive, to keep you training. But it's a constant, lukewarm reminder that even the simplest elements of survival are stripped bare in this place. You drink it down, this bland, essential liquid, and wonder if you'll ever taste truly clean water again. The water you drank still sits, a tepid pool in your gut as you're herded into the dusty training yard. There's no gentle introduction here, no warm-up. A heavy wooden sword, the rudis, is thrust into your unready hand. It's surprisingly weighty, this crude length of timber, far heavier than any practice tool has a right to be. The wood is rough, unpolished, perhaps even a little splintered, and it feels alien, like gripping a small log rather than a weapon. You can almost smell the stale sweat of countless others who have held it before you, their desperation seeping into the grain. You try to lift it, to emulate some heroic pose you've only ever imagined. Your arm, weak from neglect and fear, quivers under the strain. Your first swing, if you can even call it that, is a clumsy, awkward lurch. It carves a pathetic arc through the stale air, accomplishing nothing but stirring a small cloud of dust at your feet. Perhaps a ripple of derisive laughter, quickly suppressed, comes from the hardened figures watching from the shadows, or maybe just the cold, unwavering stare of the doctor, your trainer. Before you can fully process your failure, a sharp, stinging crack echoes through the yard, followed by an explosion of pain across your shoulders or the backs of your legs. The doctor's rod, swift and unforgiving, has delivered its first brutal lesson. There's no coddling here, no gentle guidance. Just the raw, immediate consequence of ineptitude. That burning welt is your new teacher, and the rudis asterisk in your hand suddenly feels heavier still, a symbol of the immense, painful journey ahead. The sting of the rod still throbs, a constant, dull ache beneath your skin, but there's little time to dwell on it. Soon, perhaps sooner than you'd like, you might be presented with your first taste of, quote, protection, training armor. Forget the gleaming, heroic figures from amphitheater posters. What you're handed is likely a mismatched collection of heavy leather and dulled metal, smelling faintly of old sweat, and, perhaps, a lingering metallic tang of fear. Imagine trying to strap on these alien pieces. The sheer, dead weight of it all is the first shock, settling onto your unaccustomed shoulders like a physical manifestation of your grim new reality. Each movement, once so natural, now becomes a clumsy, restricted effort. The manica, the segmented arm guard, might feel like an iron vise, stiff and unyielding, its plates grating with every flex. The manica, or greave, protecting your leg, could dig mercilessly into your shin with every tentative step you take. You try to raise an arm to turn your head, and the leather and metal plates don't just resist. They actively fight you, scraping against your raw skin, pinching in unexpected places where straps meet flesh. It's ill-fitting, not custom-made for your comfort, but for basic, brutal functionality. And on your novice frame, it feels less like protection and more like a cage. The sun, already beating down with an indifferent intensity, now seems to amplify its heat through the metal, cooking you slowly within your own defenses. Sweat begins to pour, not just from exertion, but from the suffocating embrace of your new, unyielding shell, trapping the heat against your body. This isn't the glorious panoply of a hero. It's a heavy, chafing, binding instrument of further exhaustion, another layer of quiet misery piled onto an already impossible day. And you haven't even faced another soul in mock combat yet. The weight of that armor, a sun-baked prison pressing down on you, is just the prelude. Now the real education begins, and it starts with the ground. Forget any notion of soft mats or yielding surfaces. You're learning to fall on packed earth, likely strewn with small, sharp, unforgiving stones that dig into your flesh with each clumsy descent. Your instructor, perhaps a grizzled veteran whose eyes hold the ghosts of 1,000 fights, demonstrates a fall. It looks almost deliberate. But when it's your turn, with the awkward bulk of your training gear, there's no control, only a jarring impact that rattles your teeth and sends a shockwave through your already protesting joints. Again and again you're sent sprawling. The lanista isn't looking for elegance. He's looking for your body to learn, instinctively, how to absorb punishment, how to not shatter too easily. Then come the hits, the blunt pedagogy of the rudis, the wooden training sword. Weighted to mimic the heft of steel, these mock weapons connect with your shield, your limbs, your torso. Each thud is a dull, sickening punctuation mark in the rhythm of your suffering. The air leaves your lungs in a surprised, painful gasp. You might try to tell yourself it's only wood, but the force is undeniably real. The intent to toughen, to bruise, to make pain a constant, familiar companion. A split lip oozing metallic warmth. A blooming purple mark unfurling like a dark flower on your arm. A fresh scrape stinging fiercely with your own sweat. These are not failures in the eyes of your trainers. These are lessons, etched into your very being. Your modern sensibilities might recoil at the sheer, unvarnished brutality of it, the complete absence of any gentle introduction. This isn't about finesse, not yet. This is about systematically breaking you down, to then attempt to rebuild you into something that can endure, something that might, just might, survive what is to come. After the initial shock, the relentless breaking, comes something else, something deceptively simple, yet utterly consuming. Your world now revolves around a single, unyielding wooden stake, the ballast driven firmly into the hard-packed earth of the training yard. Standing roughly human height, it becomes your primary instructor, your silent, wooden nemesis. There's no strategy session, no pep talk, just the stark reality of this unmoving opponent. Hours will dissolve here under the hazy eye of the sun. The rhythmical thwack of your heavy wooden practice sword, the rudis, against the palace, becomes the dull soundtrack to your existence. Each impact sends a jarring vibration up your arms, a stark contrast to the smooth, worn wood of the hilt gripped tight in your sweating palm. You can almost smell the sun-baked wood of the stake, the faint, earthy aroma of the damp ground beneath, mingled with the ever-present tang of your own sour exhaustion and the dust kicked up by countless shuffling feet. There's no glory to be found in this endless repetition, no cheering crowd, just the monotonous drilling of basic strikes, blocks, and footwork, each movement scrutinized, corrected with a sharp word, or perhaps a stinging rap from a trainer's rod. To your modern mind, conditioned for constant stimulation and quick rewards, the sheer, grinding pointlessness of it all might begin to wear you down faster than any physical blow. This isn't a complex strategy game. It's the brutal, unglamorous foundation stone by painful stone. The burn in your shoulders, your arms, your legs becomes a constant throbbing companion, a dull ache that whispers of how utterly unprepared your body is for this life. That throbbing companion, the ache you fondly believed was your absolute limit. Consider it merely the entry fee to this rather exclusive club of suffering. Your trainers, often grim-faced former gladiators themselves, men whose scars tell silent stories and whose eyes have seen far too much, observe your faltering form. They don't see your pain with sympathy, not really. Instead, there's a chilling calculation, a knowing look that suggests they understand your breaking point far better than you do. Their singular, relentless purpose is to drag you kicking and screaming, or more likely, whimpering, far beyond it. Day after grueling day, imagine the sun, or perhaps the dim, oil lamp glow of the indoor training yard, beating down. Sweat stings your eyes, plastering gritty dust to your skin until it forms a second, uncomfortable layer. The air is thick with the smell of exertion, old sweat, and the damp, packed earth of the training ground. There's no safe word here, no polite request to pause and catch your breath, no tapping out like in some modern fantasy. You might stumble, your vision blurring, the world swimming in a haze of profound exhaustion, each breath a ragged saw in your chest. Perhaps the metallic tang of blood, from a split lip bitten in effort, or a nosebleed coaxed by the strain, fills your mouth. Yet the command to continue, sharp and unyielding as a freshly honed blade, slices through the fog of your despair. Collapse is an option, certainly a brief surrender to the screaming protest of your muscles and lungs. Compliance is the other. And with each enforced repetition, each push beyond what you thought was endurable, you feel something fundamental within you begin to fray, your very resilience stretched taut, almost to a whisper-thin transparency. And as your body screams, a new layer of bewilderment settles in, thick as the dust motes dancing in the slivers of light piercing the ludus gloom. It's not just the physical agony that grinds you down. It's the utter, isolating confusion of language. The words barked by the lanista or the trainers. Harsh, guttural sounds that mean nothing to your modern ears. Habet, scutum, brutus, just a jumble of syllables, sharp as ancient stones, hitting your senses with an alien cadence that offers no comfort, no understanding. You try to decipher meaning from gestures, from the angry set of a jaw, the impatient flick of a whip, the sneer on a fellow trainee's face. But even this is a desperate gamble, a silent plea for clarity in a world deliberately opaque. A shouted command, perhaps, ad scutum, which means, to the shield, might as well be, dance a jig, for all the sense it makes in your disoriented state. A moment's hesitation, a wrong turn born of misunderstanding, and the immediate, painful sting of a lash, or the thud of a practice sword against your already bruised ribs is your only, brutal translation. There are no helpful subtitles here, no patient teacher. The other condemned souls around you, the men and women sharing this grim fate, they too speak in this alien tongue, or perhaps in their own native languages from distant corners of the empire, equally lost to you. The low murmur of the barracks at night, the muttered curses under duress, the occasional desperate plea, they wash over you, a tide of unintelligible noise deepening your solitude until it feels like a physical weight pressing down. There's no one to quietly ask, what did he mean by that? No friendly face to whisper a quick translation, to offer a moment of shared understanding in this terrifying new world. You are an island of incomprehension, in a sea of urgent, often hostile demands. Even the rough slang of the arena, the clipped orders born of life and death urgency, would remain a locked door, ensuring every interaction is a fresh reminder of how utterly out of place, how deeply vulnerable you truly are, your own thoughts perhaps the only familiar sound in this cacophony of the past. And beyond the confusion, deeper still, a cold companion begins to take root. Fear. Not the sudden jolt of a near miss on the motorway, or the anxiety before a presentation. No, this is a different beast entirely, a shadow that clings to your every thought. Imagine a low, persistent hum beneath every waking moment, a tremor in your gut that never quite settles. a constant chilling whisper reminding you of the stakes. It's the fear of a misplaced step in training leading to a brutal lashing, the skin splitting open under the whip, the agony a sharp, unwelcome lesson. It's the chilling certainty that every sunrise could genuinely be your last, a thought that sours even the thinnest, most tasteless gruel in your bowl. This isn't the abstract dread of a distant threat. It's the tangible presence of imminent pain, of spectacular public failure watched by thousands, of a lonely, ignominious death far from anything familiar. There's no off switch for this feeling, no weekend break or comforting distraction. Each echoing shout from the training yard, every glint of polished steel being sharpened nearby, every callous laugh from a seasoned veteran, they all become tiny hammers relentlessly tapping away at your resolve. You might find yourself staring at your own hands, calloused and raw, wondering how they'll feel, broken and useless, or slick with blood, yours or someone else's. This constant wearing abrasion of the spirit, this gnawing dread, would begin to consume you long before you ever heard the deafening roar of the crowd, long before you felt the hot, unforgiving sand of the arena beneath your trembling feet. And as that gnawing dread takes root, something else begins to wither, something far more fundamental than your courage. It's the quiet, relentless erosion of *U. The name your mother called you by, the one whispered with affection or shouted in playful camaraderie. That name is dust now, swept away by the indifferent efficiency of the ludus, the Gladiator school. You are nothing and no one from before. Perhaps they assign you a new one, something stark and brutal like Ursus the Bear or Ferox the Fierce, names that speak only of potential violence, chosen to incite fear or admiration from a distant crowd. Or maybe, even more chillingly, you become a number, an entry in a cold ledger, easily catalogued, easily erased and replaced should you fail to meet their brutal expectations. Your stories, the intricate threads that wove the unique tapestry of your life before this grim threshold was crossed, they hold no currency here. They are worthless. Who you were, a farmer whose hands knew the honest ache of the harvest, not the jarring shock of parried blows, a craftsman whose skill brought form and beauty into the world, now forced to master only its violent destruction, a parent whose children's laughter is now a memory too precious, too agonizingly painful to hold on to in this brutal new reality. All of it becomes a phantom limb, an ache for a life that effectively no longer exists. You are a *turo, a novice, a raw, unformed piece of clay to be pounded and shaped by the lanista, the school's owner. Your worth is now measured purely in your capacity to learn, to endure, and ultimately to perform in the sand. As the last vestiges of your old self are systematically scoured away, what truly remains? A vessel, perhaps, hardened and hollowed by design, waiting to be filled with the grim, singular purpose of the arena. And the arena always gets what it wants. And as this vessel, you'd soon discover that the concept of personal space, as we might understand it, simply doesn't exist within the damp stone walls of the Cludus. Imagine, if you will, stepping into this new, bewildering world, where every breath you take feels shared, every unguarded movement meticulously observed. There are no quiet corners to retreat to, no private chambers to call your own, no moment to simply be alone with your thoughts, your fears. You sleep on rough, often thin pallets, packed tightly shoulder to shoulder with dozens of other men. Their snores, their coughs, their restless turnings and muttered dreams become a constant, inescapable soundtrack to your nights. The air thick with the cloying scent of unwashed bodies, stale food, and the underlying metallic tang of fear and exertion. During the day, the trainers, the guards, the lanista himself, their eyes are always upon you. It's a heavy, scrutinizing gaze, constantly assessing. Every flicker of weakness, every moment of hesitation is noted, catalogued, perhaps even punished. And then there are the most basic, human needs, the functions that demand a modicum of privacy in almost any other circumstance. The latrines are starkly communal, often just a long stone bench riddled with holes, open to anyone and everyone who needs to use them or simply passes by. There's no closing a door, no brief moment of solitude. This constant, enforced proximity, this relentless stripping away of all personal dignity, would be profoundly, deeply unsettling. It's a subtle, insidious form of erosion, wearing down your spirit even before you face the deafening roar of the crowd. A constant, suffocating reminder that you are no longer your own person, but a component, a tool, in a much larger, much grimmer machine. From the erosion of your private self, the constant, grinding intimacy of the Kraus ludus, you would eventually find yourself in the training yard. This open space, perhaps baked by the sun, thick with dust kicked up by shuffling feet, is where the true nature of your new life begins to dawn with chilling clarity. Here, the air isn't just filled with the grunts of exertion, or the rhythmic thwack of wooden practice swords against shields. It's heavy, with the palpable threat of genuine harm, a silent promise of pain hanging in the gritty atmosphere. You might be made to stand aside, a raw recruit, perhaps clutching your own heavy wooden rudies, its unfamiliar weight already a dull ache in your arm. You watch two figures, veterans of this brutal school, engage in what is euphemistically called practice. There's no theatrical flourish here, no grandstanding for a distant crowd. This is close, ugly, and utterly real. The thud of a shield against ribs isn't a hollow stage sound. It's a sickening crunch that seems to echo in your own chest. A misjudged parry, a moment of carelessness, and suddenly there's a dark, almost blackish red line blooming on a forearm, a grimace of genuine pain swiftly, almost professionally, suppressed. Real blood, seeping into the thirsty dust. That sight, the undeniable evidence of real injury, would likely curdle any lingering hope that this was merely a robust form of sport, a performance art with a bit of an edge. The grim set of the fighters' jaws, the sheer brutal efficiency of their movements, designed not for show but to incapacitate, to asterisk hurt, would etch itself into your mind with cold precision. This wasn't about points or applause. It was about learning to survive and witnessing firsthand the terrible cost of a single mistake. The cold knot tightening in your stomach would be a stark instructor indeed. And so, as the meager light fades, you're ushered, or perhaps roughly shoved, towards what passes for your sleeping quarters. Imagine a cell, small and stone cold, perhaps shared with other equally battered and anxious souls. The floor is unforgiving, maybe a thin scattering of straw offering the barest illusion of comfort beneath your abused body. Your muscles don't just ache, they scream, a deep throbbing symphony of every brutal impact and contortion from the day's lessons. Sleep, when it eventually, fitfully comes, is a cruel tease. It's not a sanctuary, but a porous membrane through which the grim reality of the ludus seeps, a constant, unwelcome guest. The air itself is thick, heavy with the smells of sweat, stale fear, and something faintly metallic you try not to identify, a scent that clings to the back of your throat. Distant sounds filter through, the distant clang of a gate, the low murmur of guards, perhaps the pained groan of another trainee dreaming of the arena, or worse, of home. Your mind, far from finding peace, replays the day's horrors with chilling clarity. The glint of steel under the harsh training yard sun, the wet thud of a practice sword against flesh, the instructor's harsh critiques echoing in the suffocating darkness. Each fleeting moment of unconsciousness is shallow, easily broken, leaving you startled awake with a racing heart, the phantom weight of a shield perhaps still heavy on your arm. You drift, not into restful slumber, but into a murky twilight, where fear and exhaustion wrestle endlessly. Dawn would arrive not as a promise of a new day, but as a grim summons, finding you no more refreshed than when you collapsed, just another cycle closer to the unforgiving sand and the roar of the crowd. The roar of the crowd, the sting of the sand. These are the moments history remembers, the brutal spectacles that define the gladiator. But what of the vast stretches of time that lay between those violent crescendos? After that fitful, fear-laced sleep, and before the next bone-jarring drill, there existed something else. Something perhaps even more corrosive to the human spirit. The sheer, crushing weight of boredom. Imagine the hours, stretching out like a barren desert. You're confined to the ludus, the gladiator school, a place that swiftly becomes your entire bleak world. Its stone walls, once perhaps imposing, are now just a drab, unchanging backdrop to an endless, spirit-draining cycle. The same grim faces of your fellow condemned, etched with their own private miseries and unspoken fears. The air, heavy with the metallic tang of old blood and the pervasive scent of unwashed bodies and cheap, rough-spun tunics, offers no relief, no novelty. You might find yourself staring at a patch of sunlight crawling almost imperceptibly across the dusty floor for what feels like an eternity, the only movement in a static, suffocating world. There's no stimulating conversation to spark the mind, no parchment scrolls filled with stories to lose yourself in, no vibrant marketplace hum to distract your ears. Just the dull thud of a distant training dummy being punished, the rhythmic scrape of a pot being scoured clean, or perhaps the low, guttural cough of a sick comrade echoing in the oppressive silence. This isn't the noble struggle often depicted. This is a slow, grinding erosion of the soul, a monotony so profound it might make the brief, terrifying violence of the arena seem almost a welcome distraction. Your mind, starved of stimulus, would begin to fray, to turn inwards in unhelpful ways, replaying past horrors or anxiously inventing future ones. This profound emptiness, this hollowing out of the self, could be a far more insidious enemy than any opponent armed with a trident and net. It's a quiet decay, unfolding far from the roar of the crowd, but just as surely lethal to the spirit within those stone walls. And as your spirit frays within those cold stone walls, you'd find no gentle hand to steady you, no soft voice to offer comfort. In the ludus, the gladiator school, kindness is a currency with no value, perhaps even a dangerous liability. Compassion? That's a weakness, a vulnerability your rivals or your keepers might exploit without a second thought. Imagine waking each dawn not just to the ache in your limbs from relentless training, but to a deeper ache in your soul, a yearning for a simple human connection that will simply never be met in this brutal place. Your fellow trainees, your collegae, are not comrades in the way you might understand it. They are shadows in the periphery, each one a potential opponent, a threat to your own fragile hold on life. A shared glance might hold not camaraderie, but calculation, a shared, stale crust of bread, a fleeting moment of quiet understanding. These would be so vanishingly rare, so out of place, as to feel like a dream, or worse, a trick. Any unexpected softness, any gesture that isn't rooted in brutal pragmatism, would likely be met with deep suspicion. Why are they offering this? What do they want in return? Quote, ... There are no shoulders to cry on here, no patient ears for your whispered fears or your fading hopes. The lanista, your owner and trainer, sees you as an investment, a valuable piece of fighting flesh, not a person with an inner world. The doctor might mend your broken bones, stitch your torn skin with rough thread, but not the wounds invisible to the eye. You are an island of suffering in a vast, uncaring sea, each man locked within his own private torment. This profound aloneness, this utter lack of warmth, is a constant chilling companion, perhaps more draining in its own quiet way than any physical exertion in the dust of the practice yard. This profound aloneness, this constant awareness that you are mere property, it all feeds into something larger, something you might only glimpse in fragments from within the confines of the ludus. Your life, your potential death in the arena, it's not truly about you, it's for the ***. This word, it whispers of duty, of obligation, a solemn offering. But this offering is given with your sweat, your fear, your blood, a currency you spend with every harsh training day. Imagine, even now, the distant hum of the city, a sound carried on the breeze, mingling perhaps with the faint exotic scent of beasts kept for the arena, or the metallic tang of weapons being sharpened. This is the sound of anticipation building for the next games. The Asterix Muniz is a spectacle, first and foremost. Thousands of eyes will fixate on the sun-baked sand, hungry for drama, for skill, for the raw, visceral theater of combat. Your agony could be their afternoon's diversion, a fleeting topic of conversation over watered wine. It's also a sacred rite, a grim homage to the illustrious dead, a bloody petition to appease restless gods. Your struggle becomes a prayer, though not one you consciously uttered, each drop of sweat a libation. And above it all, there's the time editor, the sponsor of the games, perhaps a senator, a wealthy man seeking favor, seeking power. He sits in his shaded box, and every roar of the crowd for a daring move, every collective gasp, reflects back on him, polishing his public image. You are a performer in his grand play for popularity, a living, breathing, and ultimately expendable advertisement for his generosity and influence. In this elaborate, deadly performance, your survival is a detail. Intensely important to you, yes. But to the vast machinery of the Asterix Muniz, it's merely one possible outcome among many. You are a pawn in this blood-soaked game of prestige and public appeasement. The show, that is the true master here, and its appetite is insatiable. Your fate is secondary to the grand, brutal poetry it demands. So you find yourself thrust into this world, not just as a generic combatant, but as a specialist, a role chosen for you, perhaps with a grim sense of irony by the lanista, the owner of your fighting school. There's no gentle induction, no beginner's course here. Imagine the cold, unfamiliar weight of the Asterix Secutor's Asterix helmet being lowered onto your head. It's heavy, pressing down, the narrow eye slits offering only a sliver of the roaring arena. The air inside quickly becomes hot, thick with your own panicked breath, each gasp a struggle. You'd be encased in nearly 30 pounds of bronze and leather, a walking fortress, yes, but a slow, sweltering one. Your movements clumsy and restricted before you've even faced an opponent. Or perhaps you're handed the tools of the Tinus Retiarius, a weighted net, a sharp trident, and a dagger. You feel the coarse rope of the net in your inexperienced hands, imagining the skill it would take to cast it effectively, to ensnare a foe rather than entangle yourself. The trident, long and wickedly pronged, seems impossibly awkward, more a burden than a weapon. Your only protection is a shoulder guard, the asterisk gallerus, and perhaps a loincloth. You are exposed, relying on a speed and agility you simply haven't had years to cultivate. The sand of the arena floor, once a distant texture, now feels gritty beneath your bare or lightly sandaled feet, a constant reminder of your vulnerability. Each gladiator type possessed its own deadly ballet, a choreography of survival that took years to even partially master. You, however, have mere moments. But let us imagine for a moment that time gently rewinds, that you are not yet standing on that hot arena sand, your heart a frantic drum. Instead, you are at the very beginning of this brutal journey, within the stark, sun-baked walls of the Tullius Dels, the gladiator school, and here you meet the Tullius doctors. These are not encouraging teachers in any sense we might understand. Often, they are veteran gladiators themselves, men whose bodies are maps of old wounds, whose eyes reflect the countless horrors they've witnessed and inflicted. Their survival was purchased with agony, and they expect nothing less from you. They patrol the dusty training yard, perhaps one with a heavy wooden sword, the rudis, used less for demonstrating technique and more for a sharp, punishing rap across the shins or knuckles. Another might carry a thick leather scourge, its tails whispering through the stale air before delivering a lesson in pain. Picture yourself then, your muscles screaming, the coarse tunic sticking to your skin with sweat. You misjudge a block, your practice shield heavy and awkward. There's no gentle correction, only the sudden, searing bite of the lash, leaving a red welt blooming on your skin. Or perhaps a brutal shove sends you sprawling onto the hard-packed earth, the doctor's face an unreadable mask of contempt, or maybe just profound indifference. These trainers believed that skill was hammered in, that discipline was a sculpture carved by fear. Each mistake is a fresh inscription of agony, etched onto your body and spirit. There are no words of comfort here. only the relentless rhythm of training, punctuated by the thud of wood against wood, the sharp crack of the whip, and the occasional choked gasp from a fellow trainee. How long, truly, before your resolve frayed under such unyielding, pitiless instruction? But let's imagine, just for a moment, that during one of these relentless sessions, or perhaps in a practice bout that got a little too real, you sustain an injury. A deep gash, a twisted limb, something that sends a searing pain through your exhausted body. Here, in a strange twist of fate, you might encounter something unexpected. Medical attention. And not just any attention, but some of the best available in the Roman world at that time. Surgeons and physicians, often highly skilled, would be at hand, their presence a peculiar sort of comfort in this brutal world. Don't mistake this for compassion, though. Oh no. You are, after all, an expensive piece of property, a carefully cultivated asset. The lanista, your owner, isn't spending his asterisk denarii on skilled doctors out of the goodness of his heart. He's protecting his investment. A gladiator unable to fight is a gladiator earning him nothing, a drain on resources. So, yes, your wounds would be cleaned, perhaps with wine or vinegar that would bite fiercely at the raw flesh, then stitched with surprising dexterity. Poultices, maybe smelling faintly of herbs mixed with something a little less pleasant, something acrid or metallic, would be applied. You might find yourself lying on a cot, the sharp sting of antiseptic slowly giving way to the dull throb of healing. But the air around you would still hum with a cold, pragmatic efficiency. Broken bones would be set, perhaps with less tenderness than you'd hoped for, but set nonetheless. The goal wasn't your comfort, not truly. It was to get you back on your feet, back into the ludus, back to training, and ultimately, back into the arena, back to being a source of profit and spectacle. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? To be mended not out of kindness, but out of pure, unadulterated financial calculus. Your body, a canvas of fresh wounds and old scars, was simply a machine to be repaired for the next performance. Those physician-skilled hands, while perhaps bringing relief from immediate agony, were ultimately just another tool in the Asterix Lanista's Asterix arsenal, ensuring the grim show could, and indeed would, go on. So, patched up perhaps, but far from free, you're back within the rough stone walls of the ludus times, the gladiator school. The air here is a permanent tapestry woven from stale sweat, the tang of cheap, sour wine, and a persistent metallic undertone. Old blood, perhaps, or just the constant, rhythmic scraping of weapons being sharpened in a distant corner. And here, amidst this grim fraternity of condemned men and desperate volunteers, a new, more insidious struggle begins. There's a harsh ladder to climb, or rather, to endure. As a tyro, a raw recruit, you are the absolute lowest rung. Imagine yourself, new and uncertain, stepping into the sun-baked, dusty training yard. The ground is hard-packed earth, unforgiving underfoot. The air is thick, not just with swirling grit, but with unspoken rules and a palpable simmering aggression. Seasoned gladiators, their bodies scarred atlases of past victories and near misses, barely acknowledge your arrival. Or, if they do, it's with a look that strips you bare, a casual shove as you pass, a sneering laugh when you inevitably fumble with an unfamiliar wooden practice sword. Your portion of the evening's often thin, gloopy stew will be the last and the least. These aren't grand battles. Not yet. These are the daily, grinding abrasions, the constant, quiet reminders of your utter insignificance. You'd find your sleeping space on the roughest pallet, in the most exposed, draftiest corner, the chorus of snores and muttered nightmares of men who might kill you, or be killed by you, your only lullaby. It's a stark, brutal education in the art of becoming invisible, or at least less of a target, long before you ever hear the distant, terrifying roar of the Colosseum crowd. And soon, perhaps sooner than your bruised spirit would wish, you would taste a different kind of fear, not just of the creeping dread of the barracks or the gnawing hunger, but of direct, clumsy, and intensely personal violence. Your first asterisk Tyrocinium pugnae, a novice's practice bout, beckons like a poorly disguised threat. Imagine standing in the sun-baked dust of the ludus yard, the gritty air thick with the metallic tang of old sweat, the earthy smell of damp ground, and something else, a faint, sharp scent of fear itself. In your trembling hand, a asterisk rudis, a heavy wooden sword, often deliberately weighted to be even heavier than its lethal steel counterpart, designed to build stamina. It feels brutally unwieldy, a blunt, unforgiving instrument of pure impact. Across from you, another asterisk Tiro, another lost soul purchased or condemned, his eyes wide and reflecting the same raw terror that grips your own tightening chest. This isn't some choreographed dance for show. It's a desperate, awkward, and surprisingly painful scuffle. The thud of heavy wood striking wood reverberates, but far more sickening is the dull, wet thwack of it, connecting with unarmored flesh. A shin, an arm, perhaps even a glancing blow to the head. A misplaced swing, your own or your opponent's, could crack a rib, shatter a knuckle, or leave you gasping on the ground, vision swimming with stars, the taste of blood and dust in your mouth. The lanista watches, his gaze a heavy weight, his expression often unreadable. Perhaps there's a flicker of appraisal if you show promise, or perhaps just cold boredom if you're clumsy. Other, more seasoned gladiators might lean idly against the training posts, their scarred faces impassive, offering no comfort, only the silent, critical judgment of men who have already walked this painful path. There is no glory here, not yet, just the grim, aching introduction to the brutal mechanics of your new, and likely short, profession. Perform poorly, show too much fear, and the best you might hope for is more grueling, painful correction from the trainers. The worst, well, it's best not to dwell on that, as the heavy wood whistles dangerously close to your ear, a stark reminder that even practice can maim. Beyond the daily aches and the constant chilling threat of serious injury during training, another, more indelible mark of your new existence might soon be seared into your very skin or painfully etched with needle and dye. It wouldn't be a badge of honor, not in the way some might romantically imagine a warrior's emblem. Instead, try to picture a moment of grim ceremony. A crude, smoldering iron glowing orange in the dim light, or perhaps the sharp, rhythmic, almost hypnotic sting of a bone needle, dipped in rough, dark dye, tapping against your unwilling flesh. This mark, often placed somewhere visible, the face, an arm, perhaps a leg, wasn't a choice, not an expression of self. It was a brand, a asterisk stigma, a crude but effective way of declaring you as property, much like livestock in a field. The acrid, sickening smell of your own burning flesh, or the sharp, earthy scent of the tattooist's primitive ink, would fill your nostrils, a perfume you'd carry in your memory, a scent forever linked to this loss of freedom. You'd feel the intense, biting heat radiating from the iron before it even touched you, or the persistent, grinding, pricking pain as the symbol of your new master, or perhaps the ludus itself, was irrevocably etched onto your body. There would be no sterile procedure, no gentle aftercare as we know it, just a smear of some rough, probably questionable, ointment and the throbbing, inflamed reminder of your fallen status. This wasn't an aesthetic statement, it was a chain made visible, a permanent label screaming to the world, and to yourself, that your life was no longer truly your own. Imagine trying to sleep with that fresh, raw wound, the constant, itching, scarring reminder of who you had become and what you had lost. Even as the fire of the brand on your skin began to dull, settling into a persistent, throbbing ache, another assault on your senses would become overwhelmingly, inescapably clear. This wasn't a fleeting discomfort you could simply walk away from or try to ignore. It was the very air you breathed, heavy and saturated, the unique perfume of the ludus. Imagine waking to it, this thick, clinging miasma that greeted you before the sun even thought of rising, and was the last thing to accompany you into whatever troubled sleep you could find on your rough straw pallet. First, there's the sharp, almost vinegary tang of stale sweat, not just your own, but the accumulated exhaustion of dozens, perhaps hundreds of other bodies packed into the barracks, training relentlessly in the dusty yard. It's a scent that has seeped into the very wooden beams and earthen floor, a permanent resident. Layered beneath that, or perhaps intertwined with it, is the acrid, deeply human scent of unwashed flesh, a heavy musk that speaks of endless exertion and precious little comfort. Then, catch the sour, slightly sweet undertone of food beginning to turn, forgotten scraps of gritty barley porridge, a heel of stale bread, or the dregs of cheap, watery wine fermenting in a discarded cup. It's a constant, dull reminder of the meager sustenance that fueled this brutal existence, a smell of quiet desperation. And woven through it all like a sinister thread is the unmistakable scent of blood, not always the dramatic gush of a fatal wound, but the persistent, low-level metallic tang from countless minor injuries, nicks from sparring, scrapes from the harsh training equipment, slowly drying, coppery and faint, on the sand of the practice arena or on wooden posts. This coppery note mingles with the cold, sharp smell of iron, of swords being laboriously sharpened on whetstones, of old, unoiled armor exuding a faint rustiness, the very tools of your new grim trade. This olfactory soup, this unwelcome, invisible companion, would have seeped into your coarse tunic, your hair, your very skin. There was no escaping it, no fresh breeze to clear it away. It was the constant, ambient smell of confinement, of fear, and of the grim, bloody work that awaited, day after unrelenting day. One wonders if, eventually, that suffocating aroma just became normal. But even that pervasive aroma of dread and iron might eventually fade into a strange sort of normalcy. Until, that is, the day of the Pampa dawns, the Pampa, the Grand Parade. It sounds almost festive, doesn't it? But for you, a gladiator, it's less a celebration and more a public preview of potential suffering, a grim appetizer before the main course. Imagine being led out from the dim, familiar confines of the ludus, your eyes blinking hard against the sudden, almost violent brightness of the Roman sun. The air outside, thick with the scent of roasting meats from street vendors, the cloying sweetness of cheap wine, and the dusty, animal smell of a sprawling city, is a jarring, overwhelming contrast to the metallic tang you've grown so accustomed to. You're marched, perhaps in surprisingly ornate, borrowed finery meant to make you look the part of a doomed hero or a fearsome beast, through streets absolutely thronged with a seething, sweating mass of humanity. Faces blur past, some alight with eager anticipation, some twisted with cruel amusement, others just blankly curious. The noise is a physical force, a wave of shouts, taunts, jeers, and the occasional, deeply unnerving cheer from someone who's perhaps placed a hefty bet on your survival or your swift demise. It presses in on you, a cacophony of raw human emotion, the collective breath of a city hungry for spectacle. There you are, utterly exposed, displayed like a prized bull being led to slaughter, or an exotic creature dredged up from some faraway conquered land. Every ripple of muscle beneath your skin, every bead of nervous sweat that dares to trickle down your temple, every flicker of fear or defiance in your eyes is openly scrutinized, silently, or not so silently, judged by thousands. There's no anonymity here, no shadowed corner to gather your fragile thoughts, only the relentless, sun-baked gaze of the mob. They're all waiting for the show to begin, a show in which you are a key and quite possibly disposable ingredient. This wasn't just a walk through town. It was an exercise in profound, public vulnerability. A meticulous, almost ritualistic stripping away of any remaining scrap of personal dignity before the real games even commenced. A final, brutal reminder of your precarious place in this unforgiving world. And then, after that ordeal of public display, after your very soul feels like it's been picked apart by 1,000 hungry eyes, comes a strange, almost unsettling kindness. The cena libera, the free dinner. This isn't the usual meager barley gruel or watery beans you've become accustomed to in the asterisk ludus, your gladiator school. No, tonight, the lanista, your owner, is, surprisingly, perhaps even unnervingly generous. Spread before you are platters heavy with roasted meats, glistening with fat, their rich, smoky aroma. A stark contrast to the usual metallic tang of fear that often accompanies your simpler meals. There are jugs of wine, dark and sweet, and perhaps even some soft bread, a luxury you might have almost forgotten the taste of. Imagine yourself there, amidst your fellow gladiators, the condemned men, The air is thick, not just with the scent of food, but with unspoken dread, a heavy blanket smothering any potential for genuine enjoyment. The man to your left, perhaps a hulking German with eyes as pale as a winter sky, picks at a piece of pork. The one opposite, a young recruit whose bravado has long since evaporated, stares blankly at a ripe fig. How does that roasted boar taste, knowing it might be the last truly satisfying thing to pass your lips? Does the wine warm your belly, or does it merely churn with the acid of anxiety, a queasy cocktail of forced indulgence and impending doom? Some historical accounts suggest gladiators ate heartily, a final, almost defiant act of fueling the body for the fury to come. Others perhaps could barely swallow past the knot of terror tightening in their throats. This feast, a brief, opulent pause before the terrifying unknown, feels less like a genuine gift and more like a beautifully decorated antechamber to oblivion. It's a rich, savory, and deeply unsettling prelude to the hot sand, the blinding sun, and the deafening roar of the crowd that awaits you on the morrow. The morrow arrives not with the gentle kiss of dawn, but as a continuation of a night likely unblessed by true slumber. Sleep, after such a feast and with such a day looming, would be a fleeting, shallow visitor, if it came at all. More likely, you'd have drifted in a haze of dread, startled by every rustle, every distant shout, each sound a phantom echo of the arena's roar, your mind replaying imagined combats in the suffocating darkness. Then, the true stirring, long before any hint of sun dares to paint the sky. A rough hand on your shoulder, perhaps, or the metallic clang of a cell door bolt drawn back, jolts you into the cold, damp gloom. The air is heavy, thick with the scent of stale sweat, lingering fear from countless nights like this, and the faint, sharp tang of oil and whetstones from a nearby armory, already humming with grim purpose. Listen closely. Beyond the frantic thrumming of your own heart, a symphony of reluctant preparation begins to swell. The shuffle of calloused feet on stone, the low murmur of guards exchanging terse words, the distant, rhythmic clatter of unseen equipment being checked and rechecked. These aren't the sounds of a new day beginning with promise, but of an old, brutal ritual about to recommence, a machine grinding back into motion. Each noise, no matter how small or familiar, seems to echo louder in the pre-dawn stillness, a drumbeat marching you steadily, inexorably, towards the hot sand and the waiting crowd. The anxiety that gnawed at you during the feast now has its teeth fully sunk in, a cold, unwelcome companion in the dim, oppressive light, a silent promise of what is to come. That cold dread from earlier now solidifies, takes shape, as an armorer, all grim efficiency and smelling faintly of old leather and oil approaches you. There's no gentle easing into this, no reassuring words. He starts with the time manica for your sword arm, heavy segments of bronze or iron, each plate overlapping, cold against your skin. It's bound tight with leather thongs that bite and creak with every small movement. You feel the chill of it, a stark, metallic embrace, and the way it restricts, a sudden, unwelcome cage after the relative freedom of the training yard. Perhaps a greave, an asterisk ochrea, is strapped to your leading leg, its cold, unyielding curve, a sudden, unwelcome pressure, the metal strangely resonant, if tapped. Each piece is a layer of grim reality, heavier than you remember, colder than you'd like, smelling faintly of old battles. Then, the weapons. No more blunted wooden swords, no more playful parries. A real gladius is placed in your hand. The polished steel is shockingly cold, reflecting the dim torchlight in deadly glints. The balance in your palm is utterly different, designed for one brutal purpose. The leather of the hilt worn smooth, perhaps still damp from a nervous predecessor. Its weight feels substantial, uncomfortably final. Your shield, the scutum, is leaned against you, its painted face, perhaps some fearsome god or beast, now seeming to stare back, a silent, indifferent witness. This is no longer a drill, no longer a display for the asterisk lanista. The sharp edges are real, the points are real. The understanding descends like a physical weight, a suffocating shroud. Every movement from now on carries the genuine peril of irreversible consequence. There are no more rehearsals, only the stark, terrifying performance ahead. And so, with your heart a frantic drum against your ribs, a relentless beat echoing the heavy tread of your own sandals on the packed earth, you begin the slow shuffle forward. You are part of a grim, silent procession, inching towards a brilliant, terrifying light that pulses at the end of the tunnel. This passage, this archway carved from stone that feels cool and indifferent to your touch as you brush against it. They call it the Porta Sanavaveria *, the Gate of Life. A rather optimistic name, perhaps even a darkly humorous one, for a doorway leading to such probable, visceral doom. Through this opening, if fortune, that fickle Roman deity, deigns to smile upon you, or if your desperately honed skill is truly undeniable, you might just walk out again. Bruised, certainly, bleeding, almost inevitably, but breathing, alive. But there is another gate, isn't there? Always. Its shadow looms large in your mind, a cold dread that settles deep in your stomach, even if you cannot see its grim architecture clearly from this cramped, anticipatory tunnel. The Porta Libitinensis, named with chilling reverence for Libitina, the goddess of funerals, of corpses, of the final rest. The Gate of Death. If the deafening roar of the crowd, a sound that is growing louder now, a wave about to crash, turns to a sudden, chilling silence specifically for you, if your strength finally gives way, if the glint of an opponent's blade finds its mark, this is your designated exit. No triumphant return through the Gate of Life, just a quiet, unceremonious dragging through this other, darker passage. The symbolism is brutally, starkly clear, a silent sermon etched in sun-baked stone and, perhaps too often, blood-stained sand. Two gates. Two starkly different destinies, separated by mere yards and a vast, indifferent universe of chance. Now imagine you are not being dragged away, but are instead just stepping onto that sun-baked arena floor for the first time. The wave of sound, then, it's no longer a distant roar, but a physical force, a solid wall of noise pressing in from every conceivable direction. Tens of thousands of voices, a cacophony that washes over you so immense it seems to vibrate the very air you breathe, perhaps even the ground beneath your sandals. You might try to pick out a single shout, a specific jeer or cheer, but it's impossible. It's just one colossal, hungry entity, a beast made of pure sound. And the smells. Oh, the smells. The dry, dusty tang of the arena sand, churned and rechurned, occasionally dampened with water, or even scented with saffron or other herbs to try and mask the grim realities, but still carrying its earthy, gritty scent. Mingled with this is the sharp, acrid aroma of stale sweat. Not just your own fierce sweat, mind you, but the collective perspiration of countless bodies packed tightly under the relentless sun. Then, a coppery metallic note begins to assert itself, the unmistakable scent of old blood, never quite scrubbed away, a grim perfume clinging to the very stones and the thirsty sand. And beneath it all a wilder, more primal scent, the musk of exotic beasts, lions, bears, creatures dragged from distant lands, their fear and fury adding another pungent layer to the olfactory assault. The sheer scale of the place is designed to crush your spirit before a single blow is struck. Looking up, you'd see a dizzying ellipse of faces, stacked tier upon tier, stretching towards the sky, a vast, undulating sea of humanity. They are a blur of color and movement, distant, yet overwhelmingly present, their individual features lost in the collective immensity. Each one a spectator, a judge, part of the great impersonal machine of entertainment, waiting. It's a spectacle engineered for awe, yes, but also for a profound, chilling intimidation. You are very, very small in this vast, roaring, reeking theater of fate. And now, before the true horror even begins, come the rituals. The air itself, already thick with the smells of dust, sweat, and something metallic that might be old blood or just raw fear, seems to press down with an added weight. You're herded, not with shouts, but with a grim, practiced efficiency, into formations. This isn't the chaos of a battlefield. It's something colder, more deliberate. There's a low murmur that ripples through the waiting lines of condemned men, some stoic, some visibly trembling, all caught in this dreadful shared anticipation. Then comes the oath. Imagine raising your hand, not in eager promise, but in solemn resignation. You swear to endure, to obey, to be burned, bound, beaten, and ultimately, to die by the sword if that is your fate. The words might be rattled off by rote by the veterans, a hollow echo of a long-accepted doom. But for you, each syllable would feel like a fresh nail hammered into your coffin. Your own voice, if you could find it, would be small and lost, a fragile thing in the face of such brutal pronouncements. It's a surrender of your will, a formal acceptance of your disposability. The procession begins, a slow, measured march towards the imperial box. The Pulvinar, where the emperor sits, a distant figure draped in purple, the very embodiment of the power that holds your life so cheaply. And then, the famous chilling salute. Avenue Imperator, morituri te salutant asterisk. Hail, Emperor! Those who are about to die salute you. It's not a plea, not a request for mercy, but a stark, almost businesslike statement of fact, delivered with as much dignity as can be mustered. The weight of those words, spoken aloud, under the gaze of thousands, acknowledging your own impending death as a form of greeting, your modern nerves, already frayed thin by the spectacle, would surely shred. How could they not? This fatalistic acceptance, this public declaration of your demise before the contest even starts, is a psychological burden almost too heavy to comprehend, let alone bear. The echo of your grim salute still hangs heavy in the hot, dusty air, a final, bitter taste on your tongue. But there's no time for such poetic despair now. Your attention, what little remains unclouded by sheer terror, is wrenched towards him. He emerges from the shadows of an opposite gate, perhaps squinting slightly in the arena's harsh glare, his movements economical, practiced. This isn't a sporting rival in any sense you'd understand. This is a man sculpted by relentless training and brutal necessity. His muscles are not for show, but for function. A dangerous, efficient machine of sinew and bone, likely scarred, certainly hardened. He carries his weapon with a familiarity that speaks of countless hours, countless drills, perhaps countless lives already taken or defended. You might search his eyes for a flicker of shared humanity, a hint of reluctance, or even just fear mirrored back at you. You will find none. He sees not a person, but an obstacle. A very dangerous, unpredictable obstacle standing between him and another sunrise, another meager meal, another day of precarious existence. There's no handshake here, no nod of mutual respect for the contest ahead. The only rule is survival, and the only referee is death itself. The roar of the crowd, which moments ago felt like a physical force, now seems distant, muffled, as if you're submerged. Your world has shrunk to this small circle of sand, to the glint of steel, and to the cold, appraising gaze of the man who intends to end you. It's a primal calculus, stripped of all pretense, kill or be killed. And he, unlike you, has been conditioned for this exact moment, this precise, bloody equation. The weapons in your hands feel alien now, suddenly imbued with a terrible significance. In the Asterisk Ludus, the training school, you sparred countless hours with a Asterisk Rudis, a heavy wooden sword. Its thwacks were jarring, bruising, but they were blows of practice, rarely breaking bone. You grew accustomed to its familiar heft, its somewhat forgiving nature. But this is an entirely different beast. The gladius you grip is solid, cold steel, dense and utterly unforgiving. Its weight is an immediate shock, a dead, insistent pull in your wrist and forearm that speaks not of drills, but of dreadful finality. You can feel its precise balance, engineered not for elegant fencing displays, but for a brutal, efficient, life-ending thrust. Its polished surface, perhaps not entirely clean from previous encounters, reflects a distorted, fearful caricature of your own face. Then there's the tire scutum's tire, the towering rectangular shield. It's not the lighter, more manageable practice version you've heaved around until your muscles burned. This one feels like a leaden slab, a dead weight threatening to tear your arm from its socket. It digs into your forearm through whatever padding you have, straining your shoulder with its sheer stubborn mass. It's a wall, yes, offering a sliver of protection, but a cumbersome one, demanding a primal strength you're not sure you can sustain. Lifting it, truly lifting it for defense, or a desperate shield-punching shove, is an act of exhausting will. Each piece of equipment, once a symbol of your grueling training and faint hope, now screams its true lethal purpose with chilling clarity. There's no playfulness left, no room for a single misjudged movement. These are tools designed solely for ending a life, and the cold dread crystallizes. One of those lives is almost certainly yours. The weight of that cold dread settles deep within your bones, a chilling companion to the heavy metal and unforgiving leather that now feels like a second, suffocating skin. Now about the rules of this grim performance unfolding around you. You might instinctively search for a clear signal, a whistle perhaps, or even a designated official ensuring some semblance of order, a touch of what you'd call fair play. But the rules here are written in the shifting blood-soaked sand, whispered by the roar of the crowd, not neatly codified for your comfort. Of course, there were some guidelines, loose threads in a vast and brutal tapestry of violence. A lanista might have barked a specific instruction before you were shoved out, or the editor, the giver of these games, might make a decisive, often fatal gesture. But your modern sensibilities, that ingrained expectation of a level playing field, of mercy for the downed opponent. That's a dangerously naive notion here, a fragile thought easily crushed under a hobnailed sandal. The roar of the crowd, a monstrous unified beast with 10,000 throats, is the only consistent umpire, and its judgment is rarely merciful. They crave spectacle, a visceral thrill, not an exhibition of sportsmanship. A dropped weapon isn't necessarily a pause for polite retrieval. It's a stark, screaming opportunity for your adversary. Your opponent stumbles, losing their footing on the treacherous ground. That's an opening, a grim invitation from the gods of carnage. The fight is meticulously designed to be a brutal, often terminal, affair. The sand, already darkened with the mingled sweat and lifeblood of those who came before you, is perpetually thirsty. It doesn't tally points or acknowledge penalties, only the final crimson punctuation mark. Survival here isn't about outplaying according to some noble code. It's about outlasting, enduring, and perhaps, just perhaps, being the one left standing when the dust and the echoes of screams finally begin to settle, leaving a silence almost as terrifying as the noise. And then, it happens. Perhaps it's your arm, heavy with the unfamiliar weight of a real gladius. That swings true, a clumsy but desperate arc. Or maybe it's his, quicker, more practiced, a flicker of dull metal in the harsh sunlight. Either way, there's the impact, not the cushioned thud of a training dummy, but a sickening, jarring connection of forged iron meeting yielding flesh. A sound absorbed by the body, a shockwave that rattles your teeth and steals your breath for a frozen moment. Then, the crimson. It's not the theatrical flourish you might have imagined from whispered tales. It's shockingly bright, almost offensively vivid against the dust and grime. If it's yours, a sudden, searing pain blossoms, hot and insistent, and a warmth spreads across your skin, sticky and terrifying. You might look down, disbelieving, at the red bloom on your tunic, or the dark rivulet snaking down your arm. Your mind, so used to the abstract, struggles to grasp this visceral, undeniable reality. If it's his blood, the sight is no less jarring. A smear on your blade, a spray across the sand, a dark patch spreading on his own rough-spun clothing. His eyes might widen, not with rage, but with a flicker of the same primal shock that now grips you. This isn't a drill. This isn't a show of skill for the asterisk lanista. This is the wet, metallic currency of the arena. And the price is being paid, right now, in real time. The scent of it, coppery and sharp, cuts through the dust and sweat. A primal alarm your body understands even if your mind is still reeling, trying to catch up to the brutal truth of where you are. And just as that coppery tang begins to sear itself into your memory, another sensation assaults you, perhaps even more overwhelming than the scent of impending death. It's the sound. The roar of the crowd isn't just background noise, a distant murmur on the wind. No, this is a physical force, a colossal wave crashing in from every tier of the sun-baked stone amphitheater. Imagine tens of thousands of voices, a churning, relentless sea of sound, battering against your eardrums, vibrating through the very sand beneath your feet. It's not a unified cheer, not always. Sometimes, it's a sharp, collective gasp, as a blow lands true. Sometimes, a hungry, almost bestial baying for more action, more spectacle, more blood. Their desires, their whims, ripple through the arena like an invisible current, a living entity that dictates the pace, the ferocity, the very outcome of your struggle. Every hesitant decision you might try to make, every fleeting flicker of strategy, is in danger of being drowned out, or worse, swayed by this relentless, deafening wave. They are the ultimate judges, their shifting moods and their thumbs the final, terrifying arbiters of life and death. Their approval, or their thunderous disapproval, is a tangible pressure on your chest, a constant, suffocating weight. Can you even think clearly, let alone fight with precision, under such an unceasing, judgmental gaze? The noise never truly stops, a constant deafening reminder of whose entertainment, whose desperate game, you truly are. And then, it happens. A searing pain, a sickening crunch, and the hard-packed sand of the arena floor rushes up to meet you. The roar of the crowd might dim for a moment, replaced by the ringing in your ears, the taste of blood and dust in your mouth. You're down. Disarmed, perhaps, or wounded too severely to continue the fight. Your opponent stands over you, waiting, his own breath ragged, his weapon still slick, but he doesn't make the final move. Not yet. Every instinct screams to survive, but survival now is entirely out of your hands. With what little strength remains, you might raise a finger, the traditional appeal for asterisk missio, for mercy. Your gaze, blurry with pain and exhaustion, lifts past your triumphant foe, past the jeering, gesticulating faces in the lower tiers, searching. You're looking for one person, the editor's side, the sponsor of these games, seated in his prominent box. He watches, impassive, perhaps. Or maybe he's enjoying the spectacle of your desperation. The collective will of thousands, a wave of noise and desire, washes over the arena, but it all coalesces into his decision, your life. Your very breath hangs suspended on this single, awful moment of theater. He might consult the crowd, gauge their bloodlust, or their fleeting pity. And then, the signal. The infamous thumb. If it's pointed upwards, a sign of mercy, you might be spared, dragged away perhaps, to heal and face this terror another day. But if that thumb is thrust downwards, towards the thirsty arena floor, well, the sand will drink deep today. There's a grim sort of efficiency to it all, isn't there? Your entire existence, reduced to a simple, silent gesture from a distant figure you've likely never met. Often, that distant figure was the emperor. Imagine him, seated high above in the imperial box, a splash of purple and gold against the stone. Perhaps he's idly chatting with a senator, or fanning himself against the midday heat, the sun baking the sand below where you lie bleeding. To him you are a fleeting spectacle, a moment's diversion in a day filled with matters of state, or perhaps just more games. He might not even look at you directly. His gaze sweeps over the arena, a vast stage of life and death where you are but one struggling player. The roar of the crowd, a wave of sound, washes up to his podium, and he absorbs it, perhaps with a flicker of a smile, perhaps with utter impassivity. Your fate, your life, might be a political calculation, a nod to public opinion, or simply a whim, as casual as deciding what to have for dinner. And when his hand moves, it's unlikely to be with any personal malice towards you. You are simply, beneath individual notice, a speck of dust on the grand, sprawling tapestry of Rome. That gesture, whether it's the turn of a thumb or the subtle wave of a white cloth, the asterisk mappa, is absolute. There's no appeal, no higher court. Just the chilling finality of one man's power, exercised almost as an afterthought. A life traded for a gesture. It's a stark reminder, isn't it? of how cheaply human life could be held, how utterly dependent one could be on the fleeting mood of a single, powerful individual. A bad day for the emperor, a moment of imperial boredom, could, quite literally, be a death sentence for you, staining the hot sand red. But let's imagine, for a moment, that you are spared. The thumb turns up, or perhaps the emperor is simply distracted, his attention already drifting to the next spectacle. You're dragged from the arena, not to the spoliarium where the dead are unceremoniously stripped, but to the *sanitarium, the gladiator's infirmary. A reprieve, you might think, a moment to catch your breath, but this is where a different kind of battle begins. One fought not with a trident or a net, but against the searing, relentless agony of your injuries and the ever-present shadow of infection. Picture a deep gash, perhaps across your thigh or your arm, laid open by a *sicca's cruel curved blade. The tranussuxu, the doctor, approaches. Roman medicine for its time was surprisingly advanced. They understood certain principles of cleanliness, washing wounds with wine or vinegar. They had specialized surgical tools, often made of bronze or iron, designed for everything from extracting arrowheads to setting bones. But what they conspicuously lacked was effective anesthesia, not as we understand it. There was no gentle drift into unconsciousness, no merciful numbing agent to dull the sharp edges of reality. Instead, there's the raw, unblinking torment. Perhaps they'd offer you strong wine, potent enough to blur the senses slightly, or even a concoction with poppy, but it would do little against the screaming protest of your nerves as the *medicus works. You might be held down, biting hard on a strip of leather to stifle your cries, feeling every probe of a cold metal instrument searching for bone fragments, every agonizing pull of the needle stitching your flesh back together with thread made of animal sinew or flax. The glint of those tools, the physician's focused, perhaps grim expression, the coppery smell of your own blood, these would be your world. And even if the procedure is deemed, quote, successful, the ordeal is far from over. The air in the *sanitarium* would likely be thick with the metallic tang of blood, the pungent aroma of herbal poultices, and something else, the faint, sweet, sickly scent of infection beginning its insidious work. Without antibiotics, even a relatively clean wound could become a gateway for raging fevers, for flesh that swells, darkens, and weeps foul-smelling pus. Surviving the arena was one brutal challenge. Surviving the recovery, with its throbbing pain and constant threat of sepsis, was quite another, a slow, agonizing gamble played out in the dim, often dirty confines of the gladiator barracks. Each day would be a test of endurance, a quiet prayer that the heat in your limb wasn't the precursor to something far worse. But if the fever truly took hold, if that heat in your limb consumed you, or if the fight itself ended decisively with the crowd's disapproval, or the editor's damning signal, there was no gentle recovery. No, your journey would take a far darker, colder turn, towards a place whispered about in the barracks, a place no gladiator wished to see from the inside, unless he was carrying out a grim, unwelcome duty. You'd be dragged unceremoniously, perhaps by a hook if you were deemed already gone, your limbs heavy, vision blurring towards the spoliarium, this chamber of the dead, often a stark, functional room located just beyond the arena's bustling edge, was as far from the fleeting glory and the cheering crowds as one could possibly imagine. Picture the air, thick with the coppery tang of fresh and drying blood, the stale, earthy scent of sweat and fear, and the chilling dampness of stone walls that had absorbed countless last breaths. The sounds would be muted, unsettlingly so. The distant, muffled roar of the ongoing games, a surreal counterpoint to the soft, resigned groans of the dying beside you, or the quiet, businesslike murmurs of the arena attendants. The *libitanerii*. Their job was not to comfort, but to reclaim. Your prized helmet, your sturdy shield, the very sandals on your feet, anything of value, would be methodically, almost impersonally stripped away. It was, after all, expensive equipment, not to be wasted on the dead or the irrevocably broken. A truly ignominious end, to be plundered while the warmth, perhaps, still lingered in your veins. A final, cold transaction in the brutal, unsentimental economy of the Roman games. Here, dignity was just another possession to be discarded. Beyond the physical grit, beyond the sheer relentless training, there's a chasm in understanding, a deep, unbridgeable gap between your mind and the mind of an ancient gladiator. It's not just about fighting prowess, is it? Consider, for a moment, your innate empathy. That quiet human instinct to wince when another is hurt, to feel a shadow of their pain. In the asterisk ludus, the gladiator school, or worse, the arena itself, this empathy would be a crippling burden, a constant fraying wire in your soul, vibrating with every blow you witnessed, or worse, were forced to deliver. Imagine being surrounded, day in and day out, by the sights and sounds of genuine, unsimulated suffering. The damp, metallic tang of blood that never quite seemed to wash from the packed earth of the training yard. The dull thud of practice weapons, heavy and unforgiving, against strained muscle and bone. The guttural cries of pain, or sometimes just weary exertion, echoing off stone walls. Your modern aversion to such raw violence, the kind we usually only glimpse through carefully curated screens, would likely trigger a profound visceral rejection. It's one thing to watch a historical epic, quite another to find yourself breathing its most brutal air. And what of your sense of self, your inherent belief in personal rights, in basic human dignity? Such concepts were luxuries, utterly alien to the world of the gladiator. You were, quite simply, property, a living, breathing commodity to be used, perhaps broken, and ultimately discarded when your value waned. The constant, grinding erosion of your personhood, the pervasive knowledge that your life hinged entirely on the whim of your master, on the roar of a distant crowd. How could a mind accustomed to freedom and respect possibly endure that without fracturing? It's this psychological terrain, perhaps even more than the physical, that would prove so treacherous, a modern spirit set adrift in an unforgiving sea of ancient brutality. But let's, for a moment, set aside the fragile modern psyche and consider the purely physical. You might be fit. Perhaps you even run marathons or lift heavy weights in a climate-controlled space, with clean water always at hand. A commendable effort, truly. Yet, that carefully curated modern fitness is a delicate ornamental bloom compared to the gnarled, iron-hard resilience of a gladiator. Their endurance wasn't a hobby. It was a prerequisite for survival, hammered into them from an early age, often an age where life itself was a constant, grinding physical test. Imagine your body, even at its peak, suddenly thrust into their world. The very air you'd breathe would feel different, heavier perhaps, carrying the sense of dust, sweat, and something metallic, something vaguely unsettling. The daily regimen in the asterisk ludus, the gladiator school, wasn't about personal bests or aesthetic sculpting. It was a brutal, relentless conditioning. Hours upon hours under a harsh sun, or in a damp, echoing hall, the thud of wooden swords against shields, the jarring impact felt deep in your bones, repeated until your arms felt like lead and your vision swam. Your carefully trained muscles, accustomed to recovery days and protein supplements, would likely seize and cramp within the first punishing hours. For the gladiator, this was just Tuesday. Their sinews were toughened by years of this, by a diet that was often coarse and meager, and by an existence where even minor injuries, untreated, could fester and kill. The aches and strains you might consider a signal to stop were, for them, merely the baseline hum of daily life. They didn't just possess strength, they embodied a profound, almost alien toughness, a body hardened not for show, but for the very real prospect of death in the arena. Your fitness would simply be a different language, untranslatable to the savage poetry of their physical world. And so that savage poetry of their physical world would be the first stanza in a terrifying epic, one you'd be thrust into without warning. Imagine the brutal shock of capture, the world violently tilted on its axis. Then, the arrival at the asterisk ludus, the gladiator school. It wouldn't feel like a school, more like a stone-cold cage where hope goes to die. The air thick with the metallic tang of sweat, old blood and despair. Perhaps the scent of cheap wine from the guards, a stark contrast to your own parched throat. Your first meal, if you could even call it that, might be a gritty barley gruel, cold and unappetizing. Not the carb loading of a modern athlete, but the barest sustenance, a constant reminder of your new, debased status. It's the kind of food that sits like a stone in your belly, a fitting companion to the stone in your heart. Each mouthful would taste of hopelessness, a far cry from anything that could be considered nourishment for the soul. The training itself, as we've touched upon, would be less a workout and more a systematic breaking, not for fitness but for the kill. Each command barked, each forced repetition with the heavy wooden rudis would chip away not just at your unfamiliar muscles, but at your very sense of self. The constant, gnawing fear, the oppressive weight of your new reality, would be a heavier burden than any training sword, a constant whisper that this pain was now your entire world. By nightfall, assuming you even made it that far without a complete physical or mental collapse, you wouldn't just be tired. You'd be hollowed out. The alien diet, the brutal exertion, the sheer, unending terror of it all. It's a cocktail of misery. Few modern souls are equipped to even sip, let alone drain to the dregs. Surviving that first day, it would be less about your physical prowess and more about whether your spirit could endure being so utterly crushed, so quickly. Thank you for joining us on PlotFall. Until our next story, may your thoughts be calm and your rest deep.